Good morning, and thank you for being here today. This is a really exciting day. Those of you who've been meeting with us at the county for several months about establishing a Food and Farm Policy Council are probably thrilled to be able to have a group of students from Bainbridge Graduate Institute help pull together information about what exists in Kitsap County and help point us in directions of how to look at a system of food and farm, food production, food distribution, and access, and making sure that we're attending to the quality and the availability of the foods that can be grown in Kitsap County, that we're buying as much locally as possible, and that we are appreciating the abundance that we actually have here in Kitsap in a way, and a systematic way, that perhaps isn't quite pulled together yet. So we have these wonderful 5 students who have taken this project on as part of their master's degrees at Bainbridge Graduate Institute, and they're going to spend the entire year working with us about how we can put together our Food and Farm Policy Council as a system to be working on now and into the future. So, Mandy, are you going to introduce the group, or who's on? Okay, Lily.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. I guess I'll stand because it's probably easier to see. So I just wanted to sort of introduce our purpose today. Charlotte sort of hit the nail on the head with her introduction, but our goal is to present some pretty shocking indicators regarding sustainable agriculture, both regionally and nationally. And then we want to use these indicators to show the incredible momentum in Kitsap County regarding sustainable agriculture, and give you a historical look at what's happened in Kitsap County and where we see that headed in the future. So that's our goal today.
Thank you, Lily. So I'm going to kick off and provide you with some very interesting data on Kitsap County. I'm not sure how many of you are already aware that in the United States, the average distance traveled by food to local tables is 1,500 miles. That's a long way that we're transporting our food to our tables and restaurants and grocery stores. In Kitsap County, nearly $1 billion is spent on all food consumed here. That's in restaurants, grocery stores, other locations. But the market share for farmers here is only 1%. So as you can see, there's a lot of work that we can do as far as making sure that the food and produce that is grown here and produced locally gets onto our tables here in Kitsap County. So since 2002, the number of farms in Kitsap County has increased by 13% to 664. However, the total farm acreage has decreased 5% to just short of 17,000 acres. And this is a move towards smaller farm sizes that is also being shown nationally. So this is a trend that the whole nation is moving towards. Of those 664 farms, 606 are less than 50 acres, and 315 are less than 10 acres. Now, as far as this push towards small farms, nationally, 91% of farms are considered small, and that is defined by the U.S. Department of Agriculture as sales of $250,000 or less. The next statistics I have are from the Kitsap County 2007 Census of Agriculture. There is a caveat, though, because according to the KEDA 2020 survey, which is the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance survey, only 43% of persons who answered the 2020 survey said that they completed the 2007 census. So it's important to note that some of the farmers from Kitsap County are missing on that census. And most of the farmers who did complete the census were from larger farms. However, from the 2007 census, the data that we get is that the market value of Kitsap County farm production in 2007 was just shy of $7 million, which is actually a decrease of 77% from 2002. The top grossing commodity groups were nursery, greenhouse, floriculture, and sod at about $3.5 million. Now, as far as sustainable agriculture, based on the census data, there are 8 farms in Kitsap County that are generating their own energy or electricity, and 203 farms are practicing rotational or management-intensive grazing. Now, the next data I have is from the KEDA 2020 survey that I mentioned. It's a survey that was conducted by the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. And this showed that half of the respondents to this survey were following organic practices. There were 96 respondents to this survey, but only 8% of those certified as organic farmers. So there is some work, possible work that can be done here to make sure that our farmers who are producing organic produce are certified. As far as education, 56% of those respondents said that they were self-taught, 32% grew up on a farm, 38% had taken classes, and the majority of those were with the Washington State University Kitsap Extension Program. And we also got some really interesting data that said that the extension program had trained approximately 400 farmers from 270 farms since 2003. And what is really heartening to hear is that 90% of the current students are considered new, and that means that they've been farming for less than 10 years, and 50% had only been farming for less than a year. So there is this really good influx of people moving into farming. As far as getting the produce from the farm to the store or the table, from the KEDA 2020 survey, the bulk of the respondents, or just over 50%, said that they market directly from the farm. 23% of respondents sold produce at a farmer's market in 2008. The number selling to grocery stores or food co-ops was quite low. It was only 9.4%. And 15 of the respondents said that they had approached stores to sell produce but had been turned down by the grocery store. So again, a possible area of opportunity. 12.5% sell directly to restaurants. The majority of respondents, which was 72%, said that they had never attempted to sell to a restaurant. And again, a possible marketing opportunity for farmers here. 11% of the respondents said that they were marketing via community-supported agriculture, and they had an average of 6 years in operations. And also the 2007 census showed that there were 29 farms total in Kitsap County that were marketing through community-supported agriculture. And again, that is another opportunity that we might consider looking into. So that is the basic data. And I'll pass you to Lily. Thank you.
Thanks, Frances. So next, we're moving on to sort of the bulk of our work. And we focused our work on 2 things. And that was creating a historical timeline of events and activities that had occurred in Kitsap County related to sustainable agriculture. And then a comprehensive literature review of specific activities which we identified as being very impactful in the overall, sustainable agriculture movement in Kitsap County. And we looked at these specific activities and identified the key stakeholders, those who were involved, and then the unaddressed stakeholders, those who weren't involved. And then we looked at the key outcomes of the activity and potential benefit for Kitsap County. So we then plotted the activities on this graph, which you can see. This is our activity graph, and we wanted to show sort of the immense momentum being created in Kitsap County. What's interesting to note is that, we weighted the different activities based on their impact 2 to 1. And so we have sort of a graph that we believe is really representative of the national trend as well. And one thing to keep in mind about this activity graph is that it's only plotting sort of the start of an activity. It doesn't plot any of the continuation, so it might have been something that is still going on or has gone over a long period of time. So this is sort of a new event graph, so keep that in mind when you're looking at it. But the general trend is an upward momentum, which we're really excited about because we think that leads to a great opportunity. So now we're going to delve into the details of the timeline and take you all on a little trip through Kitsap County's past. Some of you are intimately familiar with some of these activities, and some of you, this may be the first time hearing about it. So let's take a journey all the way back to 1917, which is when the WSU, so Washington State University Extension, was created in Kitsap County. So that dates back to quite a while ago. Some of you are very familiar with WSU Extension. I noticed a couple, Arno. I sent out an email to Arno because it's very extensive as far as what the WSU Extension is doing in Kitsap, and quite impressive. So basically the philosophy is helping farmers to help themselves, and this is done in various ways. So it extends non-credit education and degree opportunities to people and communities throughout the state. So really the idea is to empower people to deal with local issues and improve their quality of life. So I think that's wonderful. So there are two different classes that are being offered right now in Kitsap for farmers. So one of them is the small, sustainable small acreage farming and ranching class, and the other one is the WSU Agriculture Entrepreneurship class. So the idea is that the farmers will be able to engage in local food production by the time they finish these classes. So you have the classes that are being offered, and in addition to the classes, there's also the Master Gardening Program, which has done a lot in Kitsap. So I think it's comprised of 250 volunteers in Kitsap, and they offer classes to citizens that are interested in gardening. There also are classes in the demonstration gardens, which is affiliated with WSU. So it's quite impressive as far as the education that's going on through WSU. So that's a little briefing of WSU. There's a lot that's going on, but those were kind of the key things that I picked up on. Great. So now we're in 1978. The Port Orchard Farmers Market opens. This is the first farmers market in Kitsap County, and it's still one of the largest, and according to its website. I've never actually been. I've only been to the Winslow Farmers Market. But their mission was to help preserve the agricultural identity and quality of rural life by providing a place for local farmers to sell goods. And as many of you know, today there are 8 farmers markets throughout Kitsap County, and this is a real thriving part of the community fabric here. Oh, and then I'm up next again. Woohoo! Okay, 1978, now we're in 1989, and the WIC program is introduced, the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, which has been hugely successful. This is funded by the Washington State Department of Health and also the USDA. And this basically ensures access to people who wouldn't traditionally have access to farmers markets. Basically how the program works is those who are WIC qualified get checks from the government, and then they can use those to buy produce at farmers markets. And this is required at farmers markets in Washington State and is a national trend as well. Okay, and I'm back for more. So in 1991, the first demonstration garden was created. So like I mentioned before, through WSU, they have demonstration gardens. And this was in Bremerton, the Anna Smith Children's Garden. So again, this is great as far as offering classes about growing vegetables and fruit. And in addition to offering classes, they also donate food to local food banks. So that's great.
Just a little brief mention that in 1998, the Kitsap Food and Farm Alliance was formed. And this is the organization that eventually turned into the Kitsap Community and Agricultural Alliance. And I will go into that in further detail in a moment, but first I'm going to let Lily continue.
Okay, so now, and as you've probably gathered, we are not touching on everything that was included in our timeline. This is sort of the high impact events which we identified. So now we're in January of 2007, and the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, which I didn't note that anybody was involved with that directly. Oh, okay, great, good to know. So that's the KEDA for short. And Francis talked quite a bit about the KEDA 2020, but this was founded, the organization was founded by the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council. And today, membership is over 100 companies, individuals, and other organizations. And they have very specific goals related to sustainable agriculture and economic development. And those include demand creation, marketing, building physical and legal infrastructure to support sustainable agriculture, and promoting education and jobs in sustainable agriculture. You good? Yeah. So now we're in November of 2007, and as Francis has talked about, KEDA released the Community Agriculture Plan, the Kitsap 2020, and this was based on the survey of 96 farmers. And this was a cross-community effort. There were many, many partners that were involved in this project. The project identified opportunities, created strategies, identified initiatives and roles. There were very specific outcomes from this project. And the idea behind it was, to stimulate the local economy through sustainable agriculture was sort of the underlying mission.
All right, so this brings us to later in 2007 when the Food and Farm Alliance became the Kitsap Community and Agricultural Alliance. So this is a community membership organization, and their mission is to provide advocacy for agriculture on the Kitsap Peninsula, enhance life, family, and community, and to connect agriculture with the Kitsap community at large. They also seek to advise elected officials, policymakers, and fellow citizens, collaborate with other regional agricultural groups and organizations, and they've done this most notably through their informational meetings with representatives from Pierce County and talking about the efforts that they've done as well. And they also seek to advocate through media. And a good example of this is the Buy Local Food in Kitsap blog, which highlights places to shop for local vendors. They feature farmers and their harvests and livestock. And they also show community events and information and news. It's me again. So then in February of 2009, the Food and Flowers program was introduced to the South Kitsap School District. This was first implemented at Sunny Slope Elementary. So the program was focused on taking out food and soiled paper from the general waste from the schools, and then they were transported to North Mason Fiber Company, where they're turned into compost and then used and sold to local area landscapers, so for a commercial usage. The school then saved about $150 per month in garbage hauling fees. And then because this program was so successful, in September of this year, the district started implementing the Food to Flowers program in all elementary schools in the South Kitsap School District.
And then, notably, in September of 2009, the Kitsap Board of County Commissioners approved a resolution, which the idea behind the resolution was to stimulate the local economy by assisting in the creation of local, sustainable green jobs. And this was supported and promoted by all the commissioners.
I shouldn't even sit down, I'm sorry. So in October 2009, very, very recently, the Food and Farm Policy Council was beginning to form, and the interest areas involved in this were food production and farming, food distribution, and the Buy Local movement. According to documents from Kitsap County, their action areas for the council are to develop community, economic, and environmental priorities for Kitsap County food and farming, receive public comment on food and farming issues, monitor and advise the Board of Commissioners concerning land use issues, review data and existing legislation and regulations, and proposed measures affecting commercial agriculture, food preservation, and food distribution. And lastly, develop recommendations for food-related policies and programs for Kitsap County.
And I just wanted to quickly mention that we have created these documents, and we want them to be available to you, both the timeline and the literature review. So instead of printing out lots of handouts, we decided to do a PDF, which we'll email to Eric, who is happy to distribute them to anybody who's interested.
Thank you. Okay, so the big question is, what does this all mean? We gave you these numbers, and we gave you all this. We basically told you what you've already been doing in the community, and we wanted to figure out and see and get a big picture sense of what Kitsap County is doing as a community, as far as the local food network, as far as sustainable agriculture, and really see. You can go to the next one. Where the connections are being made. Because you have these individuals over here and you have these individuals over here, and they're sitting there and they're sitting there and they're doing this and doing that, but it's really where do they connect? And that's really the important part that we see needs to start happening. So I thought I'd introduce some national and also local trends that are happening across the country, as far as like the slow food movement, really like looking at making your food and not just always buying the processed, prepackaged food. The locavore, the shift of people moving to eating local food, to discussing local food as a topic. The idea of nutrition. Some ideas that I'd like to introduce with this. There's a researcher from the University of Washington by the name of Adam Drunowski, if anyone's ever heard of him. And he's an obesity researcher. And what he did is he went into the supermarket just to kind of figure out why it is that the amount of your wealth is a good predictor of your obesity rates. And so he went into the supermarket, and what he largely found was the processed, non-perishable foods in the middle of the building. And then on the outside edge, you have all the fresh foods, the produce, the dairies, the deli section. And what he found is for $1, you could get 1,200 calories from your cookies or your potato chips. But you could only get about a little over 200 calories of carrots. And to wash it down, you could get 875 calories from soda, but you could only get about 170 calories from orange juice. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, that's nutrition. That's public health, and that's a part of why we're talking about this right now. Then we go to look at another thing, thinking just about a part of the local board is also just supporting your local businesses and the whole buy local idea and the marketing and kind of keeping the money within the local economy. And that's where I go back to the data that Francis gave us about the $1 billion being spent in Kitsap County, but only a 1% market share locally going to the local farmers. And that seems like a pretty enormous opportunity right there. That's a lot of money. And that's just a very tiny, we should have done a little pie chart. That would have been just a sliver. It would have been a line, essentially. So one of my favorite little studies I like to always bring into that whole buy local ideas is the Andersonville study and the Austin study. And in Austin, I'll just speak about that since I'm from there. They had this study of them where they spent $100 at a local bookstore, book people, and they spent $100 at a Borders Books, and they compared, based on the financial data, where that money went after it was spent there. And this included accountants, lawyers, all the services, including the retail and where it went, and through the employees. And they found $100 spent at a Borders, only 13 of those dollars stayed within the local community. When it was spent at book people, exact same establishment, 43 of those dollars stayed in the local community. It's a little over 3 times as much money staying within the local community. So, you can go on. So ultimately, when we look at the local food network, we can really see it from just multiple paradigms. It's a public health issue. It's an economic issue. It's a community issue. It's a nutrition issue. It's not just about the farmer and the food and let's eat local. It's just all encompassing, and I think it's something that people are really starting to catch on to. That it's a very much a catalyst for really benefiting the community as a whole. So then the idea is, well, okay, great. So it's a good idea. What next then? So we in our study really felt that it was important to start connecting the dots, start connecting and understanding who the key stakeholders were, who the assets in the community are. And one framework we kind of considered as a model is asset mapping. And what asset mapping is, it's defined largely by Kretzmann and McKnight. There's a textbook they have about it called Building Communities from the Inside Out. And the idea is largely you're combining local people, informal organizations, and institutions to work hard and to connect, to ensure that there's teamwork, that there's not redundancies, and they're not working against each other. I think that one's pretty important right there. And one of the really keys to that is just communication. And I think a part of actually asset mapping is actually going on right now when we have different assets of the community, different stakeholders in the community in this room right now, and not literally face-to-face, but adjacent to each other, which is close and a good start. But when you start developing these relationships and seeing each other's perspectives, you have the farmer talking to the educator, talking to the county official, you really start to understand, you can create creative solutions and collaborate. You don't have to bring so many outside sources, and you have, it's the idea of building from the inside out. You have what's in the community already, and then it's really important just to bring them together and identify them. One of the great parts about asset mapping that I think is pretty key is it also involves identifying strangers, is what they call them. The idea of obviously the stranger is someone who's not included, someone who's not familiar. And that's sometimes very important when you have people working on an issue. It's important to step back and it's like, well, who are we not addressing? What stakeholder is not in this room? And to bring them into that discussion to just make sure you're covering all your bases, so you have the most creative solution. So, but overall, yeah, in our study and doing our literature review of what Kitsap County has done, we're very impressed by how far on the forefront Kitsap County as a whole is really doing as far as the local food network, as far as sustainable agriculture, educating the farmer, educating the consumer, and just the fact that they even had the idea of bringing us in to help them with this. This is, I think, something that, I'm being from Portland, Multnomah County is just now getting on it. Y'all are already, this is a large municipality, and y'all are even ahead of them. It's just amazing what y'all have done already. And we really look forward to open up a discussion, dialogue to see what we can do next with that. Thank you. Okay. You want me to discuss that? Okay, so the next 2 quarters, what the main ideas of what we're doing. So this first quarter is largely getting to know Kitsap County, kind of the background and understanding what obviously has been done, what we just did, what has been done, what you're doing, and who you are, and what the community is like. Our next quarter involves assessment. So this was identifying kind of metrics to measure things by, and kind of to start the movement, to get the ball rolling. And then the final quarter is implementation. So we would love to hear any feedback or questions y'all may have.